What happens if I won't tip at the restaurant in the USA? Nothing happens. People will just think you're rude. Here is Australia. Tipping is pretty rare. But I am doing a US trip next year, so also interested in what people say about this. Usually they take you out back and they break your kneecaps behind the restaurant. Nah, I'm kidding. Nothing usually, it's just seen as disrespectful. The US system is BS for sure. But there's nothing we can do about it because restaurants have lobbied for the ability to pay their waitstaff way under minimum wage so they can rely on tips. That said, if you don't tip, most likely not much will happen. They might give you a less than happy look as you leave. I wouldn't eat there again though, just to be safe. Oh, but if you're like me and have an overactive sense of guilt and anxiety, you'll be haunted by visions of your waitress crying about not receiving any tip because she needed that money to pay for her daughter's life-saving surgery or something. I mean, it is the US, so that's feasible. Worked at a famous steakhouse country music joint while I was in college. I'm not sure it's everywhere because this was my only server job. But we had to tip out 4% of our sales to back of house and hostesses every night, if I got stiffed on tips. I ended up paying out of my hourly wage to serve my tables. More often than not, I walked away with food and gas money. But I definitely had nights where I was paying out of pocket. Again, not sure how common this is in general server jobs. You'll be seen as rude by everyone who knows you did it. You're not going to get chased down. But if you go out to eat with an American, they'll either remind you or go back to cover it themselves. Worst thing staff will do is ask what they could have done to improve your experience. 20% is standard. 5% means you think the service was terrible and are trying to send a message. Remember that in a lot of restaurants, servers tip out the rest of the staff based on a percentage of sales. When you stiff your server, they still have to pay the rest of the staff, so they are paying for you to eat there. When you choose your restaurant and meals, remember that the price on the menu is for the food, not the service. On a related note, tax is not included on the price tag most places and will be another 6%. Depending on where you go. Follow the customs of the place you are visiting. I hate bartering. But if I go to a place where bartering is common, I barter. I don't believe in women being submissive. But if I go to a place where women are expected to cover up, I cover up. As a traveler, just follow the custom. A $5 tip on a burger will most likely amount to like a 33% tip. So that would probably be very much appreciated. 20% isn't always an obscene amount. And there's no direct punishment if you don't tip. But people who work in food service hate serving foreigners for exactly this reason. They know that you don't think tipping is necessary, so they go in expecting no tip. You will likely get service that is cold and impersonal. You can help break this cycle by not perpetuating that stereotype. Where you live, tipping isn't customary, and that's fine. But here it is. So if you plan to visit, plan to follow the local customs and either tip your waitresses or just prepare your own food. Whoa. Some of the answers here are weird. Was a waitress at a full-service, sit-down restaurant here in the USA for a few years. It really depends on the state you'll be visiting. Reddit acts like things are terrible everywhere here. But I was paid the same state minimum wage as everyone else in my state. Was $9 per hour at the time IRC. Plus tips. That and my second job at the time helped me get through college. So, if I were your waitress, I'd certainly wonder why you didn't tip. But I wouldn't make a stink to your face about it. People who didn't tip me, I just assumed they couldn't afford it and felt bad for their situation. Or assumed they didn't understand the tip culture here. And then went on with my day with a shrug. Other waitresses I knew sometimes gave said non-tipping customers at their tables the stink eye, but never blatantly confronted them about it. Tip what you feel the service was worth. If it sucked, tip nothing. If it was great, tip something. If you don't want to support tip culture here in the US, tip nothing. Do as you please. Note that this also depends on the restaurant. At McDonald's or for takeout, no, tips are not expected there. At a nice sit-down restaurant where everything is brought to your table and your every meal whim is catered to, yes, that's where tips are culturally expected. Edit. Downvoted for answering from the perspective of someone who was an actual waitress in the USA and tried to comfort the OP's worries from said perspective? Reddit. Go to bed. God will smite you, dead fool. You get shot in the kneecaps. When you travel, you adopt the customs of the culture you are visiting. If you don't do that, you are rude and entitled and should stay home. Most likely, the server will just be sad. But morally, I could never not tip BC. I've worked the service industry for barely enough money to cover taxes if you didn't factor in my tips. Sometimes the server will say something BC they are desperately trying to feed their family. Unions in the service industry do exist, but are very few and far between. And honestly, I've been in a few different types of unions and all it did was make things harder, such as promotions and raises. BC, the company has to run everything past the union and it takes a lot of time and often the negotiations take forever. Your tip is their salary. That's how it works here. It's also why our portion sizes are huge. Our refills are free, and the menu prices are lower than you'd find elsewhere. It's just how things are. And until that changes with forced legislation, it's how they'll continue to be. They kill you. As a fellow German who has been to the US twice, yes, tipping culture, they're absolutely messed up. You don't just tip in restaurants, but also in other settings that you wouldn't expect. Workers rely on tips because they're not paid a livable wage by their employers. Tipping them is just the morally correct thing to do. Also, what really surprised me was that when you go to a restaurant in bigger groups, think like more than 6 people, a tip may automatically be added to your bill. When I was on a student exchange in NYC, we ate at Applebee's and we were really disappointed with a lot of things. My friend ordered mac and cheese without meat. She's a vegetarian, and she got it with meat. The water tasted like the tap water, which tastes like a swimming pool, with a lot of chlorine. And we automatically had to tip 18% or more because it was on the bill. They also took our credit cards in the back to swipe. It was so uncomfortable. It's normal in the US that they take your credit, debit cards someplace else to swipe them. Be prepared for that, and if it makes you uncomfortable, make sure you have enough cash to pay for everything with cash. Servers often have to tip out, which means give a percentage of their sales to non-tipped staff, so you're actually costing them money by not tipping. If you don't tip, then you do God a favor. They will follow you home. Nothing, but don't eat there twice. Some places may remember you.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Aircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.